Hello and welcome. It's Marita Harmonic Wholeness, curator of the Grief to Joy Summit Experience. We're on day 3, and I'm so excited that today I'm your speaker. I kind of feel it's super cool that I'm like right in the middle, anchoring that center. And we're going to talk about a safe, sacred space or a safe, sacred container. And we'll talk about what I think might be the difference and how I kind of like the term safe, sacred space container. Why not, right? So, all right, so what is a safe, sacred space or container, and why is it important? Let's talk about first what sacred means and I'm looking over here because that's where my notes are. Sacred is worthy of or regarded with reverence, awe, respect, and holy. Just kind of feel those words. Sacred describes something that is dedicated or set apart for. And to feel safe is to feel free from harm or risk, to remain unhurt. And I kind of like to switch that unhurt to remain whole, right? We want to remain whole. So we tend to think of a sacred space as a building. It's a place. It's a place we go to, right? You might have already thought, well, maybe the childhood church that you went to, or the synagogue, or the place of worship. If you go worship, and now, well, with COVID, not now, but you know what I mean? You probably think about that building that you go to, right? You may think of it being outside. Like my biggest church, I love going to the Gulf of Mexico. That is my sacred space. That's where I am just the happiest and most contented ever. I'd like to suggest that being out in nature is the biggest of all sacred spaces. It can be a building. It can be a specific place. If you've ever been in one of those old, ancient, like ruins or cathedrals, they're awe-inspiring. If you sit in the pews and you look at the massive amount of, like, how did they do that back then, right? That's where I go. I'm just like, wow, the dedication to that whole process of building something like that for the purpose of the people to come in and worship is just, it's awe-inspiring. A sacred space can also be any space that is energetically held as holy. And this is one of my high gifts when I think back on my whole life. Even as a child, I used to play church underneath the dining room table. That was where we did church. That was my little sacred space. So right now, we have created a sacred container just by being here. And if you're watching this on the replay, just by being here, you're here and you're tapping into this sacredness of what we've created here for you. So we've kind of tapped on like what is a sacred space, but let's really go a little bit deeper. And I want to start by telling you what it's not. So a sacred space is not governed by rules and line items of what you have to have and what you cannot have. I just so disagree with that because it takes away the individuality of who you are and what you bring into the equation. And I want to give you an example about this. So I was in a community about 8 years ago where I have no idea where this dude thought he had to do this, but he created literally a line item list of what a sacred space had to have and what it could not have. And just that notion alone really is like, well, who are you to dictate that, number one? But one of the things on there was you cannot have a pet in the sacred space. And I'm like, that was so offensive to me. At the time, I had a healing practice in my home, and I had a little kitty. Her name was Ginger, and she was a healer kitty. And she would come in, she would know when I had an appointment, and she'd come in and she would literally just walk throughout the room, and she'd clean up all the energy. She'd prepare the space energetically. She would create a sacred space. And then she would leave, and she would know when I was done. I mean, I would not, no signs, like I didn't open and shut doors, nothing like that. She would just know. She'd come down and she'd come in and she'd clean up the room again. Sometimes she'd hang out depending on the client. And I did have some, I had some clients that were really struggling, like, or even when a client was really in a place of struggle, and she would literally sit at their feet. Literally, like one time, it was like, okay, honey, I gotta put you down. She's got to turn over, you know? And so my client turns over, and then she's right back at the feet, you know? So that was my life. That was my reality, working with, in a cohesive, beautiful arrangement with my client and an animal. And here I've got this other individual saying that deemed it unholy. And I'm like, no, that's not going to work for me at all. So that's what it's not. It's not a list of it has to have this and it can't have that. It's you've got to commune with the space itself and yourself. You always bring you into the equation. So what is it? So a space can be a real physical space, or a space such as in a specific type of a meeting or a session or an event like this, right? So like I said, we are in a sacred space right now. It's both physical and energetic. So even though we're all around the world right now, we're still in a container. It's an energetic container, okay? And then just as an ancillary comment, so I'm just going to give you something to ponder throughout your life, is what if you were a sacred space? How does that make you feel? So I just told you that a sacred space is not a list of what it has to have and what it cannot have and all that. But now I'm going to give you elements of a safe, sacred container, and that may be present. Okay, just to kind of give you something. It may be a group, large or small. For the scriptures say, for where two or more are gathered, right? When two or more are gathered, then we've got a commonality. There's also in a group setting, no matter how large or small, there's always a witness. There's that whole witnessing thing going on. We talked about that, I think yesterday. The witnessing of, like, you are witnessing someone else's process and someone else is witnessing yours. So that's the value of a group, is that whole witnessing element. And then there's also, as you expand and you become aware, you're not just so steeped in your grief that you become aware of when you're sliding. So there's like, you're in the muck of it, but there's a part of you that's witnessing, right? There's a part of you that's observing, and that's where the expansion can come in. because you finally see, you've been able to separate something. The other element is a leader or a facilitator that's gifted with the ability to hold that sacred space and to allow for self-inquiry and be able to listen to your words and those things you're not saying. This is really crucial for you to feel safe enough to be vulnerable. And that leads into, it's counterintuitive, but allowing yourself to be vulnerable actually creates strength within relationships. So if you're in a group setting and you're sharing something that really is hard, but because the container is safe, it's easier, right? The relationships with the other individuals become strengthened, but it also will strengthen yourself because you're kind of like, and remember that observer I talked about? That observer can go, it's not as bad as I thought. It's not as scary as I thought it would be. It's your ego that wants you to be quiet because it doesn't realize that by voicing your pain, there's healing. It just knows that, it just sees the fear, and the fear is the through part. It's the valley, right? We want to get through the valley. So to grow, you have to do something out of the ordinary. And I just commend you for being here, for being in the summit, because it speaks to your dedication to your own healing, to your own journey. And we've talked about this again earlier, is time. An element in what's sacred is time. You're dedicating this time to be with me. You can also dedicate time to self-reflect, to write, to sing, to pray, to walk a labyrinth, to go to a body of water and throw rocks in it and scream. I mean, there's lots of things you can do, but it's when you take the time, can't it be holy? Isn't that a holy act to take care of yourself? For the purposes of our discussion, we're setting a time aside today to look at grief. Whatever brought you here into this container. We are here at this time, but we all have our own respective rooms and homes. So as we come together, we create a sacred environment so we can experience a sacred time. And the last element I want to talk about is an open heart. So as we do all of this, it's a natural, it's kind of like what's first, the open heart to do this, or we do this and we get an open heart. It's kind of like the cyclical thing, and it changes as we do the spiral, right? We talked about that the other day too. I think that was yesterday. And I'm sure there's more elements, but this is just a really good start for the conversation. So why is it valuable and why is it important to have a sacred container? And I believe it allows an inner transformation to begin. And once it begins, there's expansion. And that expansion feels like a deep breath, right? Like, oh, I found a way to to emote. I found a new way to express. I found a new community where I can be whatever, okay? And this is where healing happens. And that's why you're here, right? That's why you're all here. So, or when you attend workshops or you go to classes or you hire that psychic or you're, whatever, you go to church, whatever you're doing, you're looking for ways to fill a hole, to fill the pain. Because when we have a loss or a death or we're grieving whatever, there's so many things that we've talked about over the course of our sessions together. There's so many reasons why we're all here in this room. We're trying to fill a void within us. And that And the best way to fill the void is to immerse yourself in it. It's so counterintuitive. It really is. Another thing of importance that the safe container brings to us is it facilitates a presence. Like I mentioned, it's that I get to breathe. I feel like I can breathe and I can exhale. I'm not holding my breath anymore. And then you're present. You're here now. And it's also kind of interesting because when you think of sacred, you think of divinity, which is always reaching up, right? God in heaven or whatever you might believe. It's always up. It's the sacred is up, right? Our crown chakra, it's all up. And yet, it provides a grounding. It provides a grounding. And when we're grounded, we can be present. See how it all feeds into one another? When you just kind of look at it from a very holistic, broad perspective. It helps you connect with yourself, and it helps you connect with the divine. All of these things, the inner transformation, the healing, the expansion, the presence, the grounding to yourself and to the divine, they're all reasons for the importance and the value of being in a safe, sacred container. Isn't that cool? Let me grab a little drink of water for a moment. So, a safe, sacred space can be anywhere. Personally, I love a clutter-free environment. Do I always have one? No, but I do. I love the silence. I love beautiful things like crystals, plants, meaningful items, things that I call sacred objects. I love to diffuse essential oils and allow the power of the aroma to influence me so that I can relax and be still. And that said, I can go to a park and I can sit under a tree and I can have the same experience with just me and the tree. So I'll tell you that when I was so upset with this dude for making his list of how things needed to look, I was so raged that I said, I could create a sacred place on the freeway. And I meant it. I literally meant it. It's like, I was like, yeah, no, give me the freeway and my intention, and I can create a sacred space there. So let me tell you an example about something that I created this year that, you know, it's part of who I am. I'm wired this way. It's natural for me. It's as natural as something that you do naturally and don't even think about. So my ex-husband was admitted into ER on a Wednesday evening, and he had like 4 days left to live. And that meant we were on vigil and lots of time in the hospital. And I honestly didn't realize what I was doing, but now reflecting back, I was creating a sacred space. I literally packed a diffuser. All the lights were off in the room. I had the bathroom light on with the door almost all shut, so the light was really diffused. No fluorescent lights. During the day, of course, the windows were open. And it was so peaceful. I mean, I remember seeing people come in, like the hospital staff, and you could just see they did that. They relaxed when they came in the space because the TV wasn't blaring and the radio wasn't on, and it was just love. There was just love there. And it was a non-harsh environment, and I believe that it allowed him what he needed to do his transition work. And I look back at that experience and I was like, I midwifed him through the death process. I recognized when he left the body and when he came back, and I would say things like, so who were you dancing with? And he'd say, mother, you know. But I just knew when he was gone and when he came back, and it was very much this, it's normal. What you're doing is normal. It's okay. He'd always have his eyes open. I'm like, dude. And I would say, close your eyes. You can look with this eye. You don't have to have your eyes open, you know? But his mind was still busy and active, and, you know, he had to do it his way. But it was just so fascinating. So how does being in a safe, sacred container influence or impact or allow someone to feel their grief or their guilt? How will having a sacred space help me through my tears and my grief? Feeling safe in your environment, whether it's in your home, a friend's house, right here in this room that we've created, my upcoming retreat that we've talked about a little bit, it allows you to relax. Like John's hospital room, he was allowed to relax. He was allowed to leave his body and go dance with his mother, right? And I got to witness that. That was so cool. It's easy to relax, and it's easier to be. We are so accustomed to having to be busy all the time that we forget to be. And if there's one gift, in my opinion, that COVID has brought us, if we've taken advantage of it, it's taught us about being. And it's shown us who is really important. And again, I want to commend you for being in the room with us today, because by you being here, you're saying that you're important enough to get through this valley. You're looking for tools, you're looking for ways that can help you through this valley. It's necessary. Taking time to grieve is necessary, so that you can diffuse the pain. By not looking at your pain, it's not serving anybody. It's just bottling everything up inside. So at this juncture, I'd like to open it up. If anybody has a question, you can either type it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask me something, and I'd be happy to answer you. Anybody? Yes.
When you just said that pain doesn't serve anybody, I think it serves to a point, right, ma'am? Pain serves the point that you get rid of it.
Well, yes, but not right, but not addressing it. Not going into the pain. If you're just holding on to the pain because you're scared of whatever that is,
yes,
that's the part that's not serving you.
That's what I tried to clarify. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, ma'am.
You're welcome. Anybody else have any questions? No, you're all so quiet. Well, I would like to just briefly tell you about an opportunity coming up next week, the Letting Go with Grace virtual retreat. It's a virtual retreat, Saturday the 24th, and it's a time where we come together and we go through the grief. It's and we do it with grace. It's personalized. There will be dialogue. It's interactive. It's very healing. It's very powerful. And I hope that you would consider attending that. If you're finding value in this, the retreat is just a bigger version of all the pieces. It's so interesting as we've gone through these sessions, how pretty much every presenter has talked about the other elements. It's just because it's all there, it's all interrelated, it's all necessary. And it would be an honor to have you in the room for that experience as well. So if there are no other questions, we're done. I'm complete. I'm going to give you one more chance. Melanie, Lewis, Becky, Ian's back. Laura, do you have anything you'd like to say? I feel like a romper room.
I don't. I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome, Laura. It's so nice to have you back. Yeah.
Here.
Yeah, nice. Nice. Oh, I see a face.
Yes, hi, Marietta, it's Melanie. I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, you're
I figured out how to get here, and here I am.
Well, you did it. You know how to do it for tomorrow, right?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're very
Thanks
welcome.
for your sharing.
Oh, you're welcome. Nice to have you here. All right, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, have a great day, and I will see you back here tomorrow. And the topic is community. We'll be back.
Thank you.